My dear sisters, healing begins the moment the heart turns back to Allah, not when life becomes perfect or pain disappears. Many people believe they must first fix themselves before returning to Him. Yet Allah asks for the opposite. Come as you are, with your wounds, regrets, and confusion. The heart does not heal by pretending strength. It heals by admitting need. When a servant turns back to Allah after feeling distant, that return itself is an act of love and sincerity. Tears shed in private, whispered dua made with a heavy chest, and silent moments of reflection are all forms of worship. Allah is not waiting to punish a struggling heart. He is waiting to receive it. The soul finds relief when it realizes that Allah already knows its pain, yet still invites it closer. Turning back is not weakness, it is courage rooted in faith. Many hearts are exhausted not because they lack faith, but because they have been carrying burdens alone. Healing begins when a believer understands that Allah never intended for the heart to survive without constant connection to Him. The Qur'an reminds us that hearts find rest only in the remembrance of Allah, not in explanations, people, or control. When the heart returns to Allah, it slowly releases resentment, guilt, and fear. This return is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is quiet and slow, like light entering a dark room through a small opening. Allah does not rush the healing process because He knows what each heart can handle. The journey back may feel uncertain, yet every step toward Allah is met with mercy. Even moments of weakness, when acknowledged sincerely, become moments of closeness. Healing unfolds when reliance replaces resistance. Turning back to Allah requires honesty, not perfection. A heart burdened by shame often delays repentance, thinking it is unworthy of forgiveness. Yet Allah's mercy is not earned through flawlessness. It is accessed through sincerity. When a believer admits their shortcomings and seeks Allah with humility, the heart begins to soften. Healing occurs when the heart stops running from Allah and starts resting in Him. Self-reflection becomes a form of worship, and accountability becomes a path to peace rather than self-punishment. Allah does not expose hearts that return to Him. He covers them. Each sincere istighfar polishes the heart, removing layers of hardness created by pain and disappointment. The soul learns that repentance is not reopening wounds, but allowing Allah to tend to them. In that return, the heart learns gentleness toward itself. The process of healing through returning to Allah also reshapes how a believer understands pain. Hardship is no longer seen as abandonment, but as an invitation to draw nearer. When the heart turns back to Allah, trials become moments of conversation with Him rather than sources of despair. Dua transforms from a last resort into a constant companion. The believer learns to place emotions before Allah instead of suppressing them. Fear becomes reliance, sadness becomes humility, and confusion becomes trust. Allah listens not only to spoken words, but to what the heart cannot articulate. Through this connection, the heart gains clarity and strength. Healing is not the absence of struggle, but the presence of Allah within it. The heart learns to move through pain while remaining anchored in faith. As the heart consistently turns back to Allah, healing deepens and stabilizes. Consistency in prayer, remembrance, and reflection gradually restores inner balance. The believer begins to feel supported rather than alone, guided rather than lost. This return nurtures emotional resilience, spiritual awareness, and inner peace. Trust grows as the heart witnesses how Allah responds with calm after chaos and light after darkness. Over time, the soul understands that every return to Allah is answered, even if the answer comes in unexpected ways. Healing becomes a continuous journey rather than a single moment. The heart no longer fears falling because it knows where to return. In turning back again and again, the believer discovers that Allah was always closer than imagined. Trust in Allah creates a strength that cannot be measured by outward circumstances. The strength is not loud, aggressive, or defensive. It is calm, grounded, and deeply rooted in certainty. When a believer truly places trust in Allah, the heart no longer collapses under pressure because it knows who is in control. Life may still test, delay, and wound, but trust transforms the way those moments are carried. Instead of panic, there is patience. Instead of bitterness, there is acceptance. Trust does not remove hardship. It removes the fear that hardship will destroy you. A heart that relies on Allah understands that outcomes are not random and that nothing arrives without wisdom. This realization brings inner stability, allowing the believer to move forward without being consumed by anxiety. Strength grows quietly when the heart learns to lean on Allah rather than its own. Limited understanding, unbreakable strength is formed when trust replaces the need for constant reassurance. Many hearts break because they rely on people, plans, or expectations that were never meant to hold that weight. Trust in Allah redirects dependence to the one who never disappoints, never abandons, and never overlooks. When a believer trusts Allah, disappointment loses its power to shatter the soul. Loss still hurts, but it no longer defines identity or worth. The heart learns to say, Allah knows, Allah sees, Allah will take care of this. This trust shields the heart from resentment and despair. Even when answers are delayed, trust provides peace in waiting. The believer understands that Allah's timing is not punishment, but protection. Strength grows when the heart stops demanding control and starts surrendering outcomes to Allah with confidence. Trust in Allah also builds emotional resilience. A trusting heart does not suppress emotions, but it processes them with faith. Fear is acknowledged, then placed before Allah. Sadness is felt, then softened through dua. Confusion is admitted, then calmed through remembrance. This balance allows emotions to exist without overwhelming the soul. The believer becomes emotionally intelligent, aware of inner states, yet not ruled by them. Trust teaches the heart to pause before reacting and to seek Allah before responding. Over tea. Imi, the believer develops the ability to withstand emotional storms without losing direction. Strength emerges from knowing that no emotion is permanent and no difficulty is greater than Allah's mercy. Trust becomes an anchor that keeps the heart steady, even when the waves are strong. A woman who trusts Allah carries dignity in her struggles. She does not need to prove her strength to the world because her confidence comes from her relationship with Allah. This trust shapes her character, making her patient without being passive and strong without being harsh. She learns to stand firm in values, even when misunderstood. Trust gives her the courage to let go of what drains her soul and the wisdom to accept what she cannot change. Her strength is visible in her calm responses, her measured words, and her refusal to let pain turn into bitterness. She understands that Allah is her protector, and this knowledge frees her from fear of judgment or loss. Her heart remains intact because it is secured by trust, not circumstances. As trust in Allah deepens, strength becomes consistent rather than situational. The believer no longer feels strong only when life is easy, but also when it is uncertain. Each experience reinforces reliance, teaching the heart that Allah has always been sufficient. This trust reshapes perspective, allowing the believer to see challenges as part of a great art plan rather than personal failures. Inner strength matures through repeated acts of surrender, patience, and hope. The heart learns that trusting Allah does not mean understanding everything, but believing that everything has meaning. With this trust, the soul stands firm, flexible, yet unbroken, aware that whatever comes has passed through the wisdom and mercy of Allah. Small, consistent worship rebuilds the heart in ways that dramatic actions often cannot. Many believers wait for a surge of motivation, believing transformation comes from sudden intensity, yet Allah loves deeds that are steady even if they seem small. A single prayer performed with presence, a short moment of remembrance spoken sincerely, or a few verses of Qur'an reflected upon daily can soften a hardened heart over time. Consistency teaches the soul discipline and humility, reminding it that closeness to Allah is built through regular return, not occasional emotion. These small acts act like gentle drops of water on dry earth, slowly restoring life. The heart begins to feel less distant and less overwhelmed because it is being nourished daily. Worship becomes a source of comfort rather than pressure, and the believer starts to experience spiritual stability rooted in routine rather than mood. The rebuilding of the heart through consistent worship happens quietly and gradually. At first, the changes may not be noticeable, yet inside something shifts. The heart becomes more aware of Allah in everyday moments, not just during hardship. Regular prayer structures the day around remembrance, grounding the believer in purpose. Dhikr calms the nervous system, easing anxiety and restoring balance. Qur'an recitation realigns thoughts, correcting negative inner dialogue with divine wisdom. Over time, the heart becomes less reactive and more reflective. Small acts of worship protect the heart from spiritual burnout by keeping the connection light yet continuous. They remind the soul that Allah does not demand perfection, only sincerity. Through consistency, worship transforms from a task into a refuge, and the heart begins to feel supported rather than burdened by faith. Consistent worship also teaches patience with oneself. Many hearts break under the weight of unrealistic expectations, feeling unworthy when they fall short. Small acts allow space for growth without self-condemnation. When a believer commits to what is manageable, worship becomes sustainable. Missed days are met with gentle return rather than guilt. This approach nurtures self-compassion rooted in faith. The heart learns that Allah values effort even when imperfect. Each return to prayer or remembrance reinforces hope instead of shame. Slowly, the believer develops trust in the process of spiritual growth. The heart becomes less harsh and more forgiving, mirroring the mercy it seeks from Allah. Through consistent worship, the soul learns balance, understanding that transformation is not rushed but cultivated through persistence and kindness toward oneself. As small acts accumulate, they strengthen the heart against future trials. A heart regularly connected to Allah is not easily shaken when difficulties arise. Worship becomes a protective layer, providing emotional resilience and clarity. In moments of fear or sadness, the heart instinctively turns to Allah because the habit is already formed. This familiarity brings comfort and stability. The believer no longer feels lost during hardship because the connection has been maintained in ease. Consistent worship trains the heart to rely on Allah before reacting to circumstances. It sharpens spiritual awareness, allowing the believer to recognize blessings even during struggle. Over time, the heart becomes anchored, able to withstand storms without collapsing. This strength is not sudden, but built through countless quiet moments of devotion. Through small, consistent worship, the heart is continuously renewed. Each act reinforces identity as a servant of Allah, restoring dignity and purpose. The believer begins to experience peace that is not dependent on external validation or control. Worship reshapes priorities, aligning daily life with the remembrance of Allah. Gradually, distractions lose their grip and the heart becomes more present. This steady connection cultivates gratitude, humility, and trust. The soul learns to find joy in closeness rather than outcomes. As consistency deepens, worship becomes woven into the believer's character. The heart no longer seeks fulfillment elsewhere because it is being replenished regularly. In this ongoing process, the believer discovers that lasting spiritual strength is built through gentle persistence and sincere devotion.